Hey Wargamers, over the past couple days, Games Workshop has not only released a preview of what unit profiles are going to look like, they've also released a preview talking about what weapon profiles are going to look like. So let's discuss that. Let's take a look at what that is and what it might mean for the game more generally. But before we do that, I just want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, if you like any of my other videos, go ahead, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And of course, I'd like to know what you think about these changes in the comments below. So, all right, let's get into it. Now, yesterday they released the preview of unit profiles. They had just a handful of profiles from the Space Marines Codex and what those might look like. And each one of them kind of speaks to a different point about what we might expect from unit profiles more broadly. So the first thing that they show us is the Space Marine profile. And more or less, it looks like Space Marines will function very similarly to how they do now. A lot of the characteristics are the same. They still have a movement of 6. The one thing that you'll notice with the updated profile is that, of course, there's not an initiative step. It's been replaced by the movement statistic. So that speaks a little bit more broadly to how close combat will be handled. But other than that, the profile is pretty much the same. They're hitting on 3s, strength 4, toughness 4. They do have leadership 7, but I would anticipate some sort of rule that makes that a non-issue as far as they shall know no fear or anything like that. I don't think that they're going to take such a drastic step as to make Space Marines, just like everybody else. That's not fluffy, and they're moving towards having fluffier armies, so don't panic. The second thing that they showed us was a Dreadnought, and again, movement 6, hitting on 3s, strength 6, toughness 7. And I think that's really the most interesting thing. So it has toughness 7 with 8 wounds and a 3-up save. Now, the old Dreadnought used to take about 16 missile pod shots from a crisis suit to kill. And under this new system, if you do the math, assuming that crisis suits hit on 4s, as opposed to 3s or anything like that. If crisis suits hit on 4s, then this makes Dreadnoughts twice as survivable. And again, assuming that missile pods stay the same and only do 1 wound and everything like that. We'll get into that in a second. But assuming those things stay consistent, as indicated by the Space Marine profile being consistent, then Dreadnoughts are twice as durable as they were before to missile pod shots. And I think that's awesome. That confirms a lot of what we were talking about, or at least supports what we were talking about the other day in terms of vehicles being more viable under a wound-based system than a hull point and armor-based system. Or at least they've been adjusted in a way that they're more viable now. So that's exciting. Again, when was the last time you saw a Dreadnought on the table? At least a lot of Dreadnoughts on the table, and it's not very frequently. So I'm excited about that. I am hoping to see just armies of Furiosos and Blood Angels Dreadnoughts just tearing through guys. So that's exciting. The next profile that they gave us was Rabuti Gilman, or Rabute, however you want to pronounce it. I still can't do it. He has movement 8, which is consistent with him being a taller guy, being a monstrous creature. That makes sense. So this is the type of fine tweaking in characteristics that we couldn't have under 7th edition. Now with the movement profile, we can have an 8-inch move as opposed to a 6-inch move, and that's cool because the dude has giant legs, so he should move a little bit faster than a Space Marine. Conversely, we might see things like Tau, which are short, move only 5 or 4 inches. Makes sense. Otherwise, it's a pretty consistent profile. Hitting on 2s, strength 6, toughness 6, wounds 9, attack 6, leadership 10, 2-up save. Yeah, I mean, that's more or less what we expected. I think the main takeaway here is fine-tuning some of the movement and attacks characteristics. It gives us a little bit more of a sense of what monstrous creatures might look like under this new rule system. And finally, they give us a Terminator squad. I think this is really just a tip of the hat, showing us that Terminators have 2 wounds, and they are a little bit slower. So they move 5 inches as opposed to 6, which makes sense. But yeah, they have 2 wounds now, which is awesome. Right before, you could just pop one off, and that was about it. Not sure I like the phrasing of that statement, but you know what I meant. All right, so overall, I think the preview of unit profiles gives us an idea of what we might expect in terms of things staying roughly similar, but just fine-tuning some of the characteristics to make them feel more like what we imagine them to be in the fluff. Now, moving on to the preview that we had today, that was weapon profiles, and this was a short and sweet one. They gave us a preview for a bolter, a flamer, and a las cannon, and the ranges of all those are the same. They still have a range profile, they still have a type profile, they still have strength and AP, although AP is now just rending, so it's a negative modifier on the armor value as opposed to just a binary yes-no thing. And then they have damage, which kind of looks like an O in the 40K font, but whatever. It's a D for damage, and it is typically 1, but for heavy weapons like the las cannon, it's a D6, meaning that each successful hit does D6 wounds. They suggest here that, of course, that is going to be ineffective against a single, 1 wound model. So if you're firing a las cannon at a mob of orcs, you're going to kill 1 orc, and it doesn't really matter. You might as well have just used a bolter. But if you're firing against a monstrous creature or a multi-wound model or a vehicle, having that las cannon shot is going to make a big difference, because it's going to strip away multiple wounds for every successful hit. In contrast, the flamer does just D6 wounds to any model or any unit within 8 inches. So if the unit's within range, roll a D6, that's how many wounds you do. It hits automatically, and it doesn't matter the size of the unit. So if you have a unit of 2 guys and you roll a 6, you're laying down 6 wounds on a 2-man unit, whereas under the old system with the template, you'd only ever get 2 wounds. So this actually has the possibility of making template weapons far more effective than they used to be, which is cool. They suggest that flamers are going to be the go-to specialist weapon for infantry units, which, if that's how it works out, if you're getting 6s on 2-man units, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that makes orcs really scary. That makes anybody with a lot of models with a lot of flamers very scary. And I agree with them. I think that we'll see a lot more flamers as a result of it. Can you imagine Blood Angels coming down, drop pods, flamers just wiping out dudes right off the bat? There's nothing you can necessarily do about that. So definitely suggesting a major shift in the meta as far as what types of weapons we see and how often they're employed, and the strategy of deploying them on the battlefield. So, again, more or less making the weapons fit better with how we imagine them working in reality, right? You can imagine a flamer either, going, all over the place to cover a large area, or just sitting on that one guy and roasting him. So that kind of makes sense with the D6, right? If you roll a D6 on a 1 model unit, it's just like the dude's just sitting there, having a barbecue, just roasting the guy, as opposed to just, there's a little spurt. It makes sense. I'm excited about it. The last thing that they mentioned on this is a big deal. D weapons are gone. So just like they moved from armor values and hull points on vehicles to the wound-based system, they're moving D weapons to the same sliding scale as all other weapons. So strength, AP, damage, special notes, that type of thing. So D weapons will function just like every other weapon in terms of how they're fired and their rules, which is awesome. I really appreciate this move in particular because it simplifies the rules in a way that's intuitive and consistent with everything else. You don't have to worry about the special set of rules for D weapons. It doesn't necessarily make a lot of your other rules invalid, and it just makes sense. So this is awesome. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I think getting rid of D weapons and just making them like every other weapon makes sense. So maybe they're going to be like strength 15 or something, but they still are consistent with the other rule set. All right, so overall, very exciting stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming.